back to the University of Law podcast and our SQE mini-series. My name is Liz Farrell and I am a lecturer at the University of Law here at our Manchester campus, and I'm also a Programme Student Lead for our LPC and SQE courses. And here with me today I've got one of our LLM students, Andy. Would you like to introduce yourself, Andy?
Hi, my name's Andy. I'm studying the SQE Plus course with the University of Law. So I did SQE 1 in January and I've sat SQE 2 in May. And so I'm just waiting on the results on SQE 2 now and just polishing off these additional optional modules now called SQE Plus, which we'll be talking about a bit later on.
Andy, I think it might be helpful if you could outline what the SQE 1 and SQE 2 assessments actually involve.
Yeah, of course. Because certainly for me, this was very much news to me, and I kind of learned it when I turned up on day one of the course. So you don't have to be sort of mega prepped in advance about the specifics. SQE 1 is basically 360 single best answer questions. So what these are essentially is you'll have a question with 5 answers, but all of them could be right, and you want to pick the best answer. That sounds quite odd, but normally what you're kind of looking for is there'll be a question and each of the answers will have like part of the right answer. So they'll only have one of the legal factors, which is relevant for the answer. So you might want to pick the one that has the most or is the most comprehensive. There will also be times when those questions are, the answers to those questions are just simply wrong. And so it's about finding that as well. So it can be very tricky. It's quite similar if you have any friends who are medics. It's very similar to how they do things. I don't know if that's why the SRA has gone for this model. It takes a bit to get used to, but once you kind of get the hang of it, and it is just a practice thing, it's doable. It is doable. Now, SQE 2 is quite a different beast. That's very much focusing on your practical skills. So you'll do 4 exams in written skills and 2 in oral, and you'll repeat that for different like practice areas. So, for example, you'll do like legal writing, which is like writing a letter to a client. You'll do legal research, so you'll get a problem and then you'll get a load of materials, and you have to answer the question basically with where you've never seen stuff before. If you're interested, if you go on the SRA's website, I think it's the Dangerous Dogs Act. That's an example. So it's like, is this poor fella whose dog's bit the postman, is he criminally liable? And so you're not expected to have any prior knowledge. You just work it out from the materials. After that, you've got case and matter analysis. That's basically a problem question if you've done a law degree before. And if you've not, again, you'll just be like, X has happened. What is the result of this, basically? So you'll get a fact pattern and you need to just answer the question as to whether this person can, buy the house like this, or whether they're criminally liable, or whether they're going to succeed in court. It's that kind of thing. And then the final issue as well is legal drafting, which is where you actually get a chance to draft your own documents. So that might be you writing a will for someone, might be you're writing a form to transfer someone's house. So that's very good. So and to conclude, very briefly, the oral skills are, one is interviewing. So a client will turn up and you have to ask them questions and give them legal advice on the spot. And then advocacy is you are before a judge, which is actually an actor in the assessment, or a solicitor actually rather. And then you will just argue for some kind of application. So it might be like, basically when you do for example, if you do the University of Law course, you'll have various different kind of applications that you get taught to do, one of which might be you're applying for what's called an interim injunction. So you'd be arguing for the judge to grant that. So lots more breadth in terms of practical skills, but the SQE 1 is very much just this vast kind of academic pool with these 360 questions.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very good summary, Andy, of kind of the differences between SQE 1 and 2. So SQE 1 is your academic law knowledge, your professional practice knowledge, and SQE 2, as you've outlined, is all those different skills that you need to be a solicitor in practice. And it's a very big course, isn't it? Quite intense, but you're nearly at the end of it now, and hopefully you found it quite enjoyable.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's certainly very intense, but I think the flip side of that is you feel you develop quite a lot. So I did a conversion course to law. So I'd studied classics first. So within about 1.5 years, gone from knowing literally nothing about the law, I mean, literally nothing, to hopefully meeting the standard of that reasonably competent, newly qualified solicitor. So I think that's a really satisfying thing. And I guess you start to see the world a bit differently as well, as you start to think, well, hang on, maybe I shouldn't sign this lease with this particular bad clause in, or maybe actually you should make a will before you go on this backpacking trip around the world to all these, amazing places, maybe slightly dangerous. So you get a different perspective, and that's been really enjoyable.
So we're going to focus today on SQE1, the SQE1 part of the course. And as part of your LLM in legal practice, you studied our SQE1 prep course to get you ready for those quite intense external exams. What was it like studying for SQE1 at the University of Law as a student? I can tell you how it is from my perspective, but I think people will be interested to hear from you who've actually gone through the exams.
Well, I think it'd be certainly good to kind of get both perspectives on it. But if I may just kind of go first. As a student, I won't lie to you, it's an intense course. You cover a lot of ground very quickly. So, for example, you're starting in September, you're doing SQE1 in January. So you're covering a lot of different new practice areas in that time. I think the key thing is it's going to be intense, but it's busy, it's full on, but it's actually really interesting, because maybe if you felt if you did a law course before, or you did the PGDL and you thought maybe academic law wasn't so much for you, this is very, very practical. This is this will valid? This is, have you transferred the house properly? What is the problem with this lease in this situation? So I think that's kind of a really satisfying thing. And the way it kind of works at ULaw is you have kind of 3-part learning model. So you do preparation, so you do some reading, you do exercises to get you ready for class. You come to class and do tasks with your friends and with your tutor, so you all work together collaboratively to get the answer. And that's really going to drill down into the difficult nitty-gritty. And then consolidate is kind of housekeeping almost. So that's where you're plugging any gaps you might have. You also, the way ULaw teaches it is you have these kind of weekly practice tests. This is to give you exam practice every single week. So when you're sitting the exam, you kind of know what's going on. You've got experience and you've got your technique honed. So that's kind of how it is for me. I found it anyways. You make a lot of great friends, but it is very intense, and you can all kind of work together for this outcome. I mean, what's it like to kind of teach it and deliver the course?
It's enjoyable. I enjoy teaching on the SQE. I enjoy teaching on all the courses I teach on, but I do really enjoy teaching SQE because, like you've kind of said, I feel that the students really engage with that prepare, engage, consolidate model, because I think like from day one, it's so clear that it's going to be such an intense course. They are really kind of ready to go and ready to engage with that model, because you need to have done that prepare work beforehand when you come to class to be able to start putting that knowledge into practice and start applying that knowledge that you've gained from your reading, from the tasks you've done beforehand, and putting that into practice and applying it to the different facts that we might present in problem questions in class. So I find it quite enjoyable, and I also like how students engage with each other very much on the course. So everybody works together. It's very collaborative. People will ask me questions, and you ask me questions, which I like. So it's good it allows us to have a lot of engagement with our students, and it's been really, really enjoyable to teach on. Actually, I've found it really, really good and really nice to kind of follow that journey through. So I taught Andy, I taught your class for wills for SQE1, and then I taught you again for SQE2 on case and matter analysis, and I've taught some people from your cohort on the SQE Plus, which is, like you said, the kind of the electives where you get to choose some subjects that you want to have a bit more of a deep dive in. So I teach on the private wealth module on the SQE Plus. So it's nice to have that journey with you almost to getting your masters.
Yeah, it's exactly. You can make, I think, really quite strong connections because you're all in it together and because you get that consistency. And I think that certainly helps from a kind of learning outcome, is like I'm not embarrassed to say, I think it was 2 days before SQE1. I still didn't understand some things of the wills, so I was smashing out a few emails to Liz. And fair play, she responded, even though she was about to go on holiday.
I was about to go for my wedding, I think, Andy. I was like, oh no.
And you know what? That's the kind of commitment you kind of get if you go for ULaw, But that's the kind of thing, you're all in it together. You get that support. And I think I can't speak for kind of other institutions or maybe where you've studied before, but it feels like there's a lot of face-to-face stuff. Like I just turned up with a bunch of questions every week, and afterwards, after the workshop as well. And you just get them answered for you. You get that kind of expert insight, and you learn off your mates as well. And you make friends. I mean, I've got now friends from Malaysia, from China, from Sheffield, all over really. So it's really great to kind of build those relationships going forward into hopefully professional life as well.
Yeah, I've still got friends that I speak to from when I did my LPC. So it's definitely a time to make some hopefully really long-lasting connections, because you're all in the same boat, you're all going through the same thing, and hopefully you'll stay friends for a long time with those people that you've met on this course. So it isn't just all about work. Obviously, we've got an end goal in sight, which is to get you all qualified as solicitors, but along the way you can make some really good friends, I think, which is fantastic. What tips would you give, Andy? So I said at the start, I told everyone listening to this podcast that you got an absolutely incredible score. I remember I got it and I sent it to my co-PSL and just said, look at these results. That was all I needed to say, because they're absolutely amazing. What tips would you give to anyone listening to this who is about to undertake their SQE1?
I mean, that's very kind of you to say that. And I think obviously everyone's going to have the things that want to work best for them, and you'll know yourself how you work as a learner hopefully at this stage. I think one thing, and it's quite obvious actually, is just practice. I probably wasn't guilty of doing quite enough of this, but just make sure you're comfortable with your exam technique. So how do I actually answer an SPAQ? What is my approach? Like when I read the question, what am I trying to pick out? And then when I approach the answers, how do I deal with it? Just as a kind of I think the thing that was actually most important for me was don't panic when you don't know the answer, because there were hundreds of questions. And I know because I would note them down if I wasn't sure about which answer it was. So I'd write, I don't know, maybe it's B or C or something. And there were loads of them where I wasn't 100% sure. So I think your exam technique of making sure that you kind of process it, you eliminate the options that you know it's not, to then end up where you're sort of gambling between one or two, and then you can think about it and go for one. Because if you think about it, the pass mark is about 60%. So if you can narrow all the questions down to between two, then statistically you're going to get 50%, aren't you? And obviously you will know more of them. So I think hope trying is so much easier said than done. But just make sure you're prepared to kind of eliminate things and kind of tackle them in a different way, rather than, okay, I know the answer to that question immediately. It's that, bang, see you later. That wasn't going to my experience. It might be for some other people, and that's great. But when things start to get quite difficult in the exam, or maybe you get thrown because you've had a few where you're just like, oh, what is going on now? Okay, I don't know. Just go back to your elimination. In terms of other preparation that I've been doing, the way I kind of do it is I focus quite a lot on the textbook, and then use the questions to kind of hone in on the key areas that I thought might come up. So, for example, I would read the textbook, I'd read my notes through, I'd literally read a page and then get up and try and summarize it, speaking to my wall. This is why I say you do have friends on the SQE who you can do this too, but I was just quite happy sort of lecturing my wall, and then make sure you summarizing the key things in your head. And then I use the ULaw practice bank. I mean, this isn't kind of just some plug for ULaw. There are other question banks out there. I didn't use them. Some of my friends did. And, they can be valuable to get different perspectives, but I felt I was fine. And then do those questions to practice the key areas. So for you, like for example, under theft, it might very much focus on like, okay, what is dishonesty, or what is an appropriation? So you kind of test yourself for things that are probably quite likely to come up in ULaw's experience. But then you've got this background to support you if you get a curveball, because it's very unclear what the SRA might put on the paper. So I think that gives you coverage. And just kind of bring this slight ramble to an end. The third thing I think I would also recommend doing as well is actually just try and take it a bit easy on yourself. There's so much to go through. I didn't go through everything. I was literally going through, I think, insolvency the night before, desperately trying to get it in my head because it just didn't work for me. If you have difficult things like that, I just thought, okay, well, I feel quite strong on, for example, company law, so I'll go for that. And then if insolvency comes up, I'll try and have like a few main areas, so like voidable transactions, that kind of thing, preferences. And then if something random comes up on like individual bankruptcy, I'll just have to gamble. So I think that is another thing, is be prepared to think, well, okay, there's some areas that won't work for me. Solicitors' accounts was another area where, I mean, Liz, you taught me for that, and it just wasn't going in my head. I think you just got to accept that and not jeopardize the risks of your stuff. I mean, so obviously you've taught this for a number of years now. Kind of what tips would you have?
I think I would echo everything you've said. I mean, obviously I haven't sat the exam, so I can only tell you kind of what I would do if I were in your position. I think a lot of what I would do is what you did. So I think, but I guess really it's like preparing for any exam, isn't it? It's just that the format is a bit different perhaps to what you may have seen previously in more traditional written exams. I think practice is absolutely crucial, because I think answering an SBAQ in 1 minute 42 seconds is a skill in itself. So that 1 minute 42 seconds, where that comes from is if you were to give yourself equal time to answer each of the 360 questions, that will break down to 1 minute 42 seconds per question, which when I'm standing at the front of the class and I've said, right, guys, here's this SBAQ to answer, it feels like forever. I'm just standing there watching my watch. But I'm sure when you're actually in the exam and you're having to decide which of these 5 answers is the best answer in this particular circumstance, I'm sure it's not very long at all. So I think practice, and you mentioned the revision app there, Andy. And I think what I see from the students I've taught is that the ones who tend to succeed and tend to do really well with this exam are the ones who have used that revision app, who have done those weekly practice tests that you also mentioned. So for each unit, every week you'll have a test of, I think it's about 15 or so single best answer questions to test your knowledge of what we've just taught in that subject. So I think practice is absolutely crucial. But then I think there are other things that I would do when I was revising. I guess kind of what you mentioned about talking to your wall. I think I did something similar, which I think the technical term is blurting, which is where you write down everything you know about a topic without any of your books. You just try to get it all down on a piece of paper, and then you kind of look back over your notes and think, oh, okay, I forgot that, or I got that a little bit wrong. I did a lot of that. And then I think I would do like silly things, like try to come up with a phrase to remember something, or a song or a poem, or just something to get it into my head. Because with closed book exams, which this is, you've got to be able to recall that detail, and you've got to be able to recall it accurately and quickly. So any way that you can find to get that to stick. I can still remember things from undergrad because I sang it to the tune of Dancing Queen, or something stupid like that, and it's just now there forever. So I think things like that. And also what I would recommend is to revise with your friends, test your friends. I don't know whether that's something you did, Andy, with your cohort, but study groups, testing them, tell me everything you know about how to create a will, something like that. It's just a way to help each other, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've got to get creative, as you say. I mean, I remember when we did geometry back in school, we had a very, very rude acronym to remember, SOHCAHTOA, which I won't go into here. But they encouraged it. You've got to get creative like that. And as you say, do your study groups, and it's like stress testing yourself, I think, is key, because actually it always was wills for me. I thought, okay, yeah, I feel pretty confident here. And you do the questions and talk to your mates, and I started nowhere near the pace, well off the pace. So I think you can plug each other's gaps. We certainly did that for the process of issuing shares in a company. Yeah, it was fun. I think getting that detail, as you said, is really key. So, like, for example, to use theft as another example, so dishonestly appropriating property belonging to another with intention to permanently deprive.
Yeah.
Just break that down into 5. Yeah, just are you comfortable with what appropriate means? So, if I'm changing labels in a supermarket to get like a PS5 for the price of a loaf of bread, is that an appropriation? That kind of thing. So just be confident with all the bits of the definition. Don't just kind of, okay, right, I know the definition off by heart, so we're on. So get that practical experience. And as you say, your mates, it's always fun to plug your mates in. I think I had all sorts. I used my girlfriend's little brother sometimes when we were thinking about the youth court. Okay, what would happen if he was here? And he's a great guy. But you just bring it to life a bit more like that. Okay, think about, well, what would my will like to be like? So writing the clauses and that kind of thing. As you say.
I think that's definitely key is like bringing it to life. That's a really good way of describing it, trying to put some fun in there, just trying to make it a bit engaging. For me as a lecturer, that's something that I always try to do with my classes, like we do the Kahoots and things like that with the single best answer questions, just to make it a little bit more engaging. So yeah, I think anything that you can do to make revision a little bit fun is always definitely a way forward. How did you deal with the stress of preparing for what is a very intense exam?
I mean, I won't lie, I'm pretty sure my hairline has started to kind of retreat a little bit. But no, in all seriousness, I think this is something that, again, is going to be kind of personal for everyone. So I can only speak about what I found works. One of the things is I'm a big fan of routine. So I would work to the same time every evening and then just stop. And if things didn't get done, then I guess they don't get done. We'll just try and do them quickly tomorrow. Because I've seen stuff online, people like staying into the library till 10 p.m. or something and starting at 8 a.m. Yeah, I just didn't do that. I've got to be honest. I'm not that industrious. Because the key thing is like, I always think a bit of it like an athlete. And you actually want to get to race day in good shape. So if you turn up absolutely exhausted, it's going to be really hard to think properly. Well, that was my impression. So one is act sensibly. 2, as I say, is keep your wider life, I think, as much as you can. So the weeks when I had the exams, I did the same as I'd done the previous week. So I went out and did exercise at the same time. I made sure I was midway through Brooklyn Nine-Nine, so I could keep watching that every night just for that stability. Normal service is on. And that, I felt, just helped me keep a bit of a lid on it a little bit more. I mean, that might not be for everyone, but that was kind of what I found helpful, trying to block out the noise and think, well, I'm running my race. I know I've got my revision plan. I'm going to stick to my timetable. And, if you're pulling a big shift in the library, that's great. Maybe on this particular day, I'm actually just having a day off just to recover. And I had a day off I think I had 5 days on, 1 day off for revision. Some people might do more, some people might do less, but I found that kept me sane, as sane as I could be. And the only other thing I'd say is try and have stuff to look forward to. So I went on Ryanair, I think in November, and was like, okay, where's really cheap to go after SQE 1? So 2 days later, we were flying to Latvia for £30 return.
Wow.
It was an amazing place. I mean, it was cold in January, as you might expect. Yeah. But again, that was all something to kind of look forward to, just to keep your life as broad as possible, even though, as you're talking about an end goal earlier. The end goal is obviously to pass the exams and become a solicitor, but trying to keep everything else ticking over as well. So maybe it just helps you then keep yourself together. I mean, what kind of tips would you have for kind of stress management?
I would say having a timetable is very helpful, or at least it was for me when I sat exams. So kind of thinking kind of at the outset, I guess, what am I going to do? When am I going to do it? How long a day am I going to dedicate to my studies, to my revision? And like you said, where am I going to fit in everything else I need to do? Seeing my friends, seeing my family, exercise, how am I going to fit this all in? And just having a bit of a schedule to keep to, because it allowed me to hold myself accountable. So to think, okay, well, today I'm supposed to be doing, an hour on trusts or whatever it might be. Have I done that? But also to help myself to see when I can fit everything else in, and that, there is more to life than just sitting and doing my revision. So I think that would definitely help me to not get too stressed because I can see what, and then I'd tick it all off. I remember I used to have those huge year planners, and I'd put, highlight all the different things I was going to do. And then it was really nice and really satisfying to be able to tick it off and feel that I'd achieved something that day. What the other thing I would say is, to help in terms of not getting to that level of feeling really kind of overwhelmed, is to start as you mean to go on. So I know definitely when I did my LPC, I really got quite invested in the PEC model, because they did have that back when I was here in 2012. It was a thing. And I can vividly remember kind of sitting at my mum's dining table doing my consolidate, which essentially is starting your revision. Because I don't know if you found this, Andy, but I certainly found that there wasn't much time between the end of my teaching and when my exams. It wasn't like undergrad where you had months of lying on the grass looking through your books. It's like you got a couple of weeks and then you're into it. So doing that, and then when I came to my revision period, I'd already got the notes made. So that definitely helped me to not get that feeling of being completely overwhelmed, because I'd really helped myself by starting early.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. There isn't much time to kind of recover from mistakes, almost, or like you kind of got to be turning up as best you can from day one, get your notes in order. And also I found as well, like, the reason I kind of asked a lot of questions in class is to try and plug the gaps now. Don't wait until the night before. Obviously that did happen sometimes, but make sure that you kind of keep topped up as you go, and then you save yourself having, a little bit of sand every now and again never really adds up to a pile, does it? Whereas otherwise, before you know it, if you've not kept on top, you've got a mountain to climb, which is going to be difficult for you. So it's almost like just be lazy almost about it, and just keep it on in a good way as you go.
Absolutely. And I think that is very key, asking those questions when you're in class or after class, or never being afraid to reach out to your lecturers, because that's essentially what we're here for. It's not kind of, okay, it's a 2-hour workshop and then that's it, you can never contact us again. That's not the process. We've got open doors, and we want to kind of help you get to your outcome. So I think asking questions is absolutely crucial, and doing that, like you say, kind of throughout from day one. What would you say you've most enjoyed about your LLM in legal practice, Andy?
That's a good question, actually. There's actually been a few things, and obviously, genuinely, I've really enjoyed the kind of the friends I've made and the connections I've made. But not to kind of go down that route. I think in terms of the course itself, I think realistically, it's feeling that getting that practical knowledge is connecting academic to practical, and suddenly it feels like, oh, actually, I can operate and use the law better. So, for example, my girlfriend unfortunately had to take her landlord to the tribunal, and this was in Scotland. There was a dispute over the condition of the flat and about them retaining her deposit. Okay. And obviously, I'm nowhere near like qualified to be able to deal with that, but at least you felt a bit more like, okay, these are the kind of things to look for. Let's look at the lease. Let's look at the law on kind of wear and tear. Let's look at how much it might have cost. For example, could they have mitigated their alleged losses in cleaning the flat and repainting it and stuff like that? And it just gives you a bit of, I think, assistance to kind of deal with problems as they arise in your life. You feel less vulnerable, and I don't know, that really appealed to me, that you can kind of cash in. I know one of my other friends, he spends a lot of time doing kind of legal advice work at Citizens Advice, or in kind of like benefits appeals and stuff like that. So, it's serious stuff that can really impact other people's lives, and this is what this course kind of prepares you to do that. So that was the thing for me. I mean, what was your kind of favourite thing about the LPC?
I think it's similar. I think how I would summarize what you've said and how I felt also is you start to kind of think as a lawyer and start to be a bit more analytical about things, which definitely then helps because I've been in practice, which was what my LPC was getting me ready for, and it really did help me in that way. And I'm very hopeful and sure that it will help you in the same way, that when you get into practice, you're you're thinking in the way you need to think to be able to solve the problems that your clients come to you with. And sometimes you might not have the knowledge because it might be something that you've not come across before, something that maybe you didn't learn on the course, but you have the tools to then go about being able to solve that and being able to explain that to your client in a way that they will understand. So yeah, I enjoyed my course. It was a long time ago now, Andy. But yeah, I definitely enjoyed it, and I definitely made a lot of good friends. And it definitely made me feel that I was kind of ready to move into practice. Another aspect that I particularly enjoyed was being able to do the electives, which is similar to what you're doing now on your SQE Plus. Having that deep dive into the three areas that I chose, and then being able to use that knowledge to think, okay, well, what do I think I would really like to do in practice? So I enjoyed that ability to see what it might be like in the three areas I did. I think family, PI, Clin Neg, and private client.
Wow.
So what have you done, Andy, on your KPAs?
So I've done mergers and acquisitions, employment, and advanced dispute resolution, and then I did a 5-week stint in competition. It's exactly as you say. It almost feels like a pyramid almost. As you start off here at the GDL or your law course, and you kind of narrow towards the top. And these kind of practice areas, you get to pick what you might want to try and qualify into, or at least do some training on training contract or work experience. And you can surprise yourself. I don't know if you kind of found this, but I really like competition. Like when we're talking about, is a banana the same as an apple? It was bonkers, but really enjoyable. I mean, did you find, did you surprise yourself at all? You enjoyed something more than you thought you would?
I think I was pretty set on what I want. Well, I was pretty set on what I wanted to do from being at university. I wanted to do family. And I did family as part of my LPC as one of my electives, and I did qualify into family in practice. But then the opportunity came up for me to swap into a different area, which doesn't happen that often. And I was given the opportunity to swap into private client. And I think it was a big decision for me whether to leave, because I'd been in family for maybe 3.5 years. So it was kind of almost starting from scratch again in terms of the practice area, but obviously I've got 3.5 years of being a solicitor behind me. But I think having done private client during my LPC, and I'd done what you call a seat in my training contract in that area, I think both of those things helped me to decide, actually, this is something that I would like to experience in practice again. So I don't think there's anything that surprised me as such in terms of the electives I chose. I enjoyed them all, and I think I always knew they were the areas that I'd like to go into, kind of private client, working alongside individuals rather than perhaps with companies, etc. So I think that wasn't surprising to me, but maybe what I did eventually find out was that I preferred work in private client, whereas kind of all throughout my undergrad and postgrad, I thought, family is the only area that I want to go into. So I think what I'm trying to say is sometimes it takes actually doing the job to find out where your strengths really lie and what really suits your personality.
No, but that's fascinating as well, because you kind of see how these electives kind of translate into practice, and then opportunities that branch off. It's not kind of qualifying to this necessarily. Off you go. That's your life. It's fascinating to see how it can kind of develop as a career, and that's something I'm hopefully looking forward to seeing a bit more soon enough.
Yeah, very soon. So, what is your plan then when your SQE Plus comes to an end, Andy?
Our plan is to moving to London and taking up a training contract with Eversheds. So I've actually just submitted some kind of seat preferences with employment. Okay. They were employment, I think, construction, contentious, and pensions. So see if any of them come back. But I'm very happy to go wherever, to be fair, just trying to get that exposure and that experience.
Yeah.
I think they're all good fun in their own way, aren't they? All the different options.
Oh yeah, I think you take all the opportunities that come your way, definitely, and you will find naturally what you think fits you best. But I'm sure whatever you do, you're going to be fantastic. It's a very exciting future.
It feels like it's been a long time coming, because as I said, I did another degree first, so it's been 7 years at university this September.
Gosh.
So looking forward to getting into the real world and getting stuck into work.
It'll be amazing, I'm sure. Right. Well, I think I'm going to let you go, Andy. Have you got any classes today?
Yeah, actually, I've got employment actually in a couple of hours, so got a bit of reading to do there. Very exciting.
Get that last minute prep done.
Get that last minute prep done.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for listening, and thank you so much, Andy, for joining us. To learn more about our SQE courses, please visit law.ac.uk and do follow and subscribe to our channel to keep up to date with our next episode. Thank you everyone, and goodbye.
Cheers, thanks, bye.